You're listening to Rise of the Independents, the podcast dedicated to agencies, their clients, campaigns, and partners on the rise. ROTI is presented by MiO Marketplace, a sales enabling tool to help agencies and their teams find, keep, and grow their business. And now here's your host, Sean Halter.
You are listening to Rise of the Independent podcast. This is the podcast where we get a chance to talk to agencies, their partners, and friends about those agencies we feel like are on the rise. The podcast is presented in part by MiO Marketplace. We're excited to have as our guest today, Larry Meador. He, of course, is the head of Evok Advertising out of Orlando, Ivan Fernandes, agency advisor, and Jonathan Faulkner, EVP of Markets Digital for iHeart. Thank you guys all for joining us. Just before we started the podcast, we were talking a bit about some of our Orlando roots. Jonathan and I actually used to work together. He's been a frequent podcast guest of mine, but back in the day, there at iHeart in Orlando, and Larry and I have known each other probably almost as long back then there as well. And again, a frequent guest of ours. Excited to have Ivan Fernandes joining. Ivan and I have been having some really fun back and forths when it comes to what's happening in the independent agency space, as well as the holding space. And if you don't follow him on LinkedIn, you absolutely should do so. We're going to start off with our very first question. It's called Hot or Not. Who's trending, good or bad, and why? Jonathan, let's start with you. You've got a newer title. You've picked up some responsibilities there at iHeart, a chance to really be predominantly responsible in some ways, in addition to what you're already doing on the digital side, but talking to and working with a lot of the independent agencies across the country.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been interesting to see as we kind of focus a lot of our efforts on the independent agency side. That's definitely a big growth area for not only iHeart, but the industry as a whole. And, you know, kind of looking at some of the agencies, what we're seeing out of things like PMG, focusing a lot on their, planning and media strategy, right? And how do they go out and build the right platform that's going to help them plan better, faster, smarter, the use of AI when and where possible. That's one that really, stands out to me that I've recently been working with.
Larry, let's chat a little bit. Who do you feel like is kind of hot right now, or who's not?
I don't know. Brands, who's hot probably all over the place is American Eagle with Sydney Sweeney, right? And then not right now is probably Cracker Barrel. But they're both in the news. I harken back. I think about what's going on with Cracker Barrel right now with their modernization of the logo. And it reminded me, I'm old, so I remember this. I remember when Coke came out with a new Coke.
Yeah.
And consumers just pushed back at it so bad. And they reverted to Coca-Cola Classic. And it reminds me of Cracker Barrel. Did they have it in mind all the time to go back? Or what did they do similar? Or how did that work out? So that anyway, it's newsworthy. And then, great jeans. Sydney Sweeney, I think that brand is capitalizing on that. So those are just a couple of brands that I think are kind of hot or not right now.
It was interesting to see recently with Cracker Barrel, in addition to the logo fiasco, they were redoing a bunch of the store locations. And I think I saw in the news over the last couple of days, they decided not to go through that. If a local Cracker Barrel has not been, in essence, rebuilt with the new branding, they're going to kind of stick with what they were. And just to dovetail off of, what was happening in the clothing space, it was nice to see Gap kind of come out and drop their own campaign with Cat's Eye. Not for nothing, but one of our investors at MiO Marketplace is Sri Rajagopalan, and his daughter's in the group, which is so crazy. Jonathan, you may not even remember this. He was auditioning for that with Hive. I actually came to you and was like, hey, can we throw a few promos in there or just something to kind of help her out? And lo and behold, there they were on the MTV Music Awards winning an award last night. Crazy, crazy what a big and small world this is sometimes.
Unreal.
Ivan, I feel like you've started to fill this space even more so this year than maybe ever before with what the holding groups are doing wrong and where independents really have a chance to kind of stand out. How in the world did you end up there?
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting. I think at the beginning of the year, I sort of realized that most of them need some help. And I think most people that are working for within the holding companies actually can't voice publicly. So I thought, why not? I can just have a voice. So I think probably is an interesting space in terms of where we see the decline into most of the traditional holding companies and the rise of independence. And it's quite interesting. I saw a recent graph about where it showed actually the rise of tech, the rise of independence, and decline of holding companies. And most conversations, like today, I have loads of conversations with other CEOs from around the world, and you could see that there's actually this movement about in-housing. It's actually gained momentum again, where there's more people actually bringing services in-house. And I think it's not good news for holding companies, where most clients, I think you mentioned earlier on, Larry, about Coca-Cola, and I just keep hearing Coca-Cola across so many vendors, that from the production point of view, from the content creation, content factories, Coca-Cola is everywhere, not in the conversations you see at the holding level, but mainly from other players. So independence on the rise.
Ivan, you're definitely not going to get invited to the WPP Christmas party this year with what I've seen you throwing out there, these little bombs from left and right. Next question is this. It's called Hey, That's Me, a bit more about who you are and what you do. Ivan, let's stick with you for now. How'd you end up in space that you're at? And tell us a little bit more about what you're doing these days.
Okay, cool. Basically, funnily enough, my background is agency world. So I graduated as a consumer psychologist, worked for loads of below the line agencies like CRM, was a publicist, went for VML, then head of planning for UK, then global head. The first global head, probably you know this, I was the first global social leader for WPP. So working with lots of different clients globally, specifically mainly with the big cheeses. So after that, became a management consultant. So working with brands directly. So I was working at Nestle in Geneva. So working with Quicksilver in Biarritz. And then I went to the other side in between. So I was intermediary. So I was actually helping clients to find agencies. So I was working for oyster catchers, so helping them to do agency reviews, pitch management, evaluating agencies. And then now I sort of pivoted to a little bit more to investment side of things. So I advise CEOs from independents to holding companies to private equity backed in terms of strategy, what they should be doing. But at the same time, I work a lot in terms of M&A side of things, in terms of helping agencies to be sold. So actually, funny enough, I've got 4 agencies in the US on the market that I'm dealing with to help them to exit.
I like it. Listen, Larry, you and I have had that conversation many times about exiting, staying in the business, doing what makes the most sense. Tell people a little bit more about who you are and what you guys do over there at Evok.
Evok's been around for about 23 years. Started with no clients, no money, no business plan. We kind of ventured out. We do a lot of credit unions around the U.S., healthcare, mostly behavior change healthcare, some travel and tourism, some education. We consider ourselves to be a boutique full service. About the only thing we don't do necessarily in-house is PR, but we have got great strategic partners. We have 5 sister agencies across the southeastern United States. So pulled together, we have about 400. My role here as CEO and kind of a chief brand strategist it's kind of evolving. I used to do everything. And now really kind of my job is hiring everybody smarter than me, which isn't hard. And then arguing with them about what they're doing versus how I would want to do it. And then realizing they're better at it than me and kind of taking a step back, but always making sure I'm focused right now on client value, making sure we're bringing value in everything we do. And I work in biz dev, agency growth. We're doing a lot more I said we do credit unions, less more in the credit union space. We recently formed partnerships with MAC, Credit Union Conference, coming up, as well as CU Insight and the Financial Brand. So we're starting to do more in that space. We really like that space. I just have built a talented team that really focus on goals and KPIs of the client and trying to achieve them successfully.
It's a great agency. We love making recommendations over there. Jonathan, it was nice to see a big group like iHeart realize the importance of the independent agency space out there and just an opportunity to be able to be of service to them. So tell everybody a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you know, it started out really more on the product side, helping to launch our different product offerings, everything from streaming, podcasting, CTV, et cetera. And as we built that up over the years, we actually created an entire team in-house that would help brands and agencies kind of get into the digital space. Well, clearly that's evolved so much over the last 5, 10, 15 years to where now we know a lot of agencies are leaping ahead, right? Especially the independent agencies that have really invested in strategy, planning, creative services, really providing true value for their partners. One of the things that we saw happening, right, was with the building of all these MMMs and different types of offerings we want to make sure that we continue to see the value and showcase the power of audio as part of that media mix. Whether it's streaming, podcasting, broadcast, radio, that is still where everyone spends about a third of their day. So we want to make sure we get that message out there. And part of what my role is creating a team that can help support those independent agencies, whether it's from cost efficiencies, planning, strategy, access to inventory, data, insights, we want to make sure that as there's varying degrees of capabilities across the country, we want to make sure that we can help them achieve their goals. So that's really what we've been doing for about the last year and a half or so.
The next question is called Bot or Not. It's hard to have a podcast without talking about AI. So let's talk about it here. What, from your perspective, are some of the tips, some of the tricks, some of the pitfalls that we need to be thinking about? Larry, let's start with you on that question.
I'm going to give the obvious answer. Over-reliance is the challenge, and that's the not. It's the over-reliance and not being authentic to the brand. And we talked about Coke earlier, and you and I, Sean, were both up at the Mirren conference. And there was, I forget the name of the agency, but there was an agency talking about how they built this Coca-Cola at Christmas campaign, and they did it using AI, and it looked incredible. And they talked about the savings in costs and how they were able to get certain things they weren't able to do. And I remember being in the conference thinking, wow, that's really creative use of AI. And it looks really cool and I was on board with it as, someone who makes content. But the amount of pushback from consumers that they got because the spot was done in AI, and the brand of Coca-Cola has always produced authentic storytelling. And I think that a lot of consumers push back on it because they said that, that's not really on brand with Coca-Cola. Our policy at Evok is lean in, not on with AI. And if you lean into it and you use it for your advantage, but you remember the brand attributes, mission, vision, values, core pillars, things you're trying to achieve, that's okay. But if you're just leaning on it too much and you're not staying true to the brand, then I think you might run into some of those challenges. So,
Ivan, I know you've got an opinion on it. You always do. Tell us what you think you're seeing out in space.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I just finished a call with a CEO that has a shop that with 100 AI specialists. I think it's quite interesting. I had a conversation with a holding company quite recently, and they were talking about this as well, because basically one of the key elements is about cost. They're basically, everybody's going to move into AI because it's the only solution for them to increase and improve their margins. So I think the interesting thing in terms of how they're going to use it and how they're going to apply that. And I think the point Larry mentioned about in terms of original type of content versus AI machine, I think got to a point when people are looking at the margins, and it's actually, I'd rather have AI. I'd rather have the money versus basically the bad PR. So I think there'll be a lot of people just following that. And I've seen loads of clients actually move in that direction. All the in-house capabilities, AI powered, all of them, from production to out of home, everything is basically AI based. And they're not afraid to say this AI as long as they make money.
Jonathan, you're sitting in this interesting space because you're on the media side, right? So this still is a relationship business, as we kind of said at the start of the call. One of the advantages of having you sitting in the seat that you're in is that you can have a real conversation with somebody like Larry. Like, hey, we noticed you ran this campaign last year and you're not running it this year, or we know this is that time of year. AI, like search, it's so hard to be able to predict what it may or may not spit out. So as you're thinking about that, especially in terms of how you're navigating your relationships and your reps are navigating those relationships with independent agencies, where does it come into play with that conversation itself?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it that we've been spending most of our time on is media strategy, planning, et cetera. And what's interesting is I think one of the most important things with AI that we can do as humans is be able to have a good conversation with AI, with whatever that LLM is, but then also be able to explain exactly what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And the reason I say that is because what I'm finding in a lot of planning and strategy recommendations, you have to look at what's the source of the recommendation. Yes, AI is looking at it. Yes, AI is doing all this, but if the source isn't set up properly, it's going to make the wrong recommendation. And now you feel as though you have an informed, inaccurate recommendation, and you might go completely forward with it. And that's I think a dangerous spot to be in. And I think Larry also hit the nail on the head. One of the things we talk about is creative. One of the first places people go is I can use AI for creative. Back to Ivan's point, to save money. Challenges is that authenticity. And I don't think that we've really seen the impact on what the lack of authenticity can have on the consumer, what their reaction is going to be. We're starting to see that now, and it doesn't look good. So that's one of the things that I think brands, agencies, us on the media side, we need to look out for when you start looking at creative. Not going overboard with AI may look good, but how are those consumers going to react to it?
This next question is called Independence Day. What's an advantage that independent agencies typically have over holding companies? Jonathan, I'm going to stick with you to answer this first. Ivan, come to you last, since I know this is an area that you're spending all of your time in. You're getting a chance to deal more and more directly with many of these independent agencies, Jonathan. And again, that doesn't take away from the great business that you guys do with many of the big shops. But from your perspective, sitting where you're sitting, what do you feel like some of those advantages are? Or has there been anything interesting as you've settled into this space that was just surprising to you?
Yeah, I think flexibility, right? So being able to work with different media, we see from our side, but different media publishers, being able to work directly with them, taking the time to say, what do our customers together need? What do we need to create together to be able to help out with whatever that need may be? And so I think flexibility within the independent agencies has helped a lot. We've been able to create some amazing tools and products together. And then I think also when you look at whether it is rates, so being able to save those brands additional dollars, being able to build larger partnerships with those media publishers, that's really what's going to provide that big value back to the advertiser versus just cost. But there's more than that.
I do feel like the partnerships has been a big part of what you guys do. You probably don't get nearly enough credit for it, especially when it comes to those independent agencies. Sometimes the bigger ones, they've got big investment teams. Obviously, they're going to go down a specific road. To your point, it may just be about the dollars and cents. But I've seen you guys form, even with some of the big, holding groups, some really fun and interesting partnerships that extend beyond that. Larry, you're in the space. You're an independent. Talk to us about what you feel like one of the biggest advantages are of somebody working with you guys as opposed to going to, one of the niches within a holding group.
We give a shit. I think that helps. The fact that the amount that you pay us actually pays my salary and pays my team member salary, so we have to be successful. But I like the partnership thing, and I'll give you real quick. And I think that I'll take it one step further. I was at a conference and I was meeting with a travel and tourism client in the state of Florida, and they're talking to them about this program they use called Arrivalist. And Arrivalist kind of tells like where consumers are coming from to their destination and what they're spending, everything else. And I said, well, where's some of the key markets that you're getting a lot of traffic? And they said, well, we're getting a lot of traffic from this one particular market up in the Northeast. And I want to give away, but one particular market in the Northeast. Why? And she's told me the data on it. And I said, you know what? We have a credit union in that market. Mm-hmm. And that credit union's got 13 locations. So why don't you build this one of a kind Florida vacation destination package giveaway? We will then use some in-branch POP, some social media posts and things like that. And we'll do some quirky ad copy about, as temperatures go down, rates go up, whatever it is, something like that. And then we'll be able to advertise your destination in that market to consumers in a market that you think is good for you. The credit union will stand out because it's snow. We'll do it in December, January, February. It's snowing there. Escape to come to Florida. It's something to give away. And it doesn't cost the credit union anything. They're going to be running social content anyway. And then the vacation stuff, they're going to get it from their partners. And look, that wasn't done over 3 months. That was done over 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I literally just pick up the phone and call the credit union. Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Let's flesh it out. And you get that with a small, nimble agency, whereas a big agency, the brand strategist for one brand is completely different from someone else. And they've got, big, huge giant departments and a lot of hurdles they got to overcome. That's my perception anyway. I know I visited a big agency in Dallas and they had 200 people working on in-store POP for a mobile company. So I think in my mind, it's very cumbersome. I think I like that. And I think a lot of small agency people and people who want to work for small agencies appreciate that nimbleness in there.
Ivan, you sat quietly here. Tell us, what do you feel like you see?
Yeah, to be honest, I think I agree with you. The nimble, I think probably it's the voice. Actually, one of my posts that the most popular post was when I wrote about independent agencies. Actually, like 1,500 engagement on that post in terms of likes. And I think one thing sort of missing still is that kind of recognition, the value for just getting the independent agent at the table. Actually, I just had a call today. Actually, most of my work, 60% is US. And it was 2 agencies from the US where basically they're struggling. So actually, we don't get the budgets. We don't even get into the room. So, and we have a great offering. I think still that gap between actually giving the voice to the independent agencies. Most of them are very, very good. And like I said, like Larry is saying, actually, they're able to listen. They're able to think outside the box. But what is still missing is that kind of opportunity. And and at the same time, not to be measured as other agencies. Because like most small agencies, they don't have the big budgets. They can't wait for 3 months to get paid. They can't basically have the big teams to basically to invest in the AI. So the expectation from clients needs to diminish as well, and think that they are helping the industry, but at the same time they need to pay fair as well. Because some of the times when you go small, you're trying to actually, instead of paying the right rate, you actually want to charge, you want to pay less.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that recognition just a little bit. It's not unusual, that old 80-20 rule. The big shops, the holding groups are going to get 80% of the press, and the independents got to fight for kind of the 20% of whatever's left. But to your point, they're doing some really great and amazing work out there outside of, say, the small agency awards with Ad Age, and occasionally when the Drum will kind of put together a list. It is hard for them to necessarily gain recognition outside of, say, the AMA, or trade organizations that are specifically catered to them. What's the answer to that, Ivan? It's difficult for them all to go to Cannes, right? And fight for that. So what's the alternative?
Yeah, I think probably, like I said, one of the key things I try to be advocating for independent agencies. One, I think we still need to promote them. We need to have more events, but at the same time, most of the big publications, they need to have a bigger space for smaller voice. But again, the problem that you have is too many small independent agencies. How you create that kind of, in terms of the right space for them to push their voice. I think what I'm seeing actually is there's more events are happening in terms of around independent agencies. So I'm doing 3 in the next quarter. So I'm going to Japan to talk to worldwide partners, collective independent agencies. I'm doing one in Barcelona, again, PR agencies. I'm doing another one in Belgium, again, independent agencies. I think all of them actually, they're recognizing that a change is needed, but they just need support. It's not just basically their will to for change, but I think other parts need to be thinking about that in the same way.
Larry, you and I both went to Miran this year. I thought it was a really good, solid conference.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily the size that I think it should be, getting back to the size that it had been. What do you think is at play there? And do you think that it's just independents have to start re-believing in themselves and understanding that, they're just as important as everybody else? What do you think's going on there?
I think there's a lot of barriers for smaller agencies. And, when we say independence, I think a lot of times it's size, it's smaller agencies, right? But like, for example, we have an upcoming trade show in the state of Florida for travel and tourism, and our clients want us to be there. But the trade show says it's only for core destinations and brands. However, you can go if you are a gold partner or above. And I compete with those agencies that are gold partners and above. And I said, well, you know what? I'll spend the money. And I'm going to spend some money. And they said, oh, we're sold out. So it's yet another barrier where I can't go spend time with my clients where they're speakers of subject matter experts, because I am literally like, I got to swim a river, climb a mountain, slay a dragon, just to even be there in the conversation. And so I think that smaller agencies have to be very creative, and maybe you reach out to brands like you are with this podcast, or you reach out and you do your own webinar. You bring in some subject matter experts like with iHeart or whoever, and you bring them in, and you do your own thing, and you do some outreach and invite some brands that could benefit from it. Because I don't think that you can be in the same space. It's hard for us as an agency that works in travel and tourism to go to the Florida Governor's Conference on Travel and Tourism, brought to you by Madden Media and Miles Media. Yeah. I mean, I'm walking in right into their, right into the war room there. So you've got to be smart. You got to be creative in how you do it, I think.
I think it's a great point. Jonathan, you and I have been kicking this around, I feel like, for almost the better part of a year, when I was even thinking of kind of rebranding Face of Marketing to focus on Rise Independence around the same time that you got, the bump in the position part. We've talked about trying to build something in the city, whether that's at iHeart or somewhere else, just to give more opportunity for this in-person piece as well, similar to Miran. So you see these little moments where you're like, oh, this is exactly what it's needed, but they're just brief moments, and then you've got something like Advertising Week, which is right around the corner, which is amazing, or Possible, which was fantastic. And it does still feel hard sometimes to go to a big event like those and feel like you're getting the love or attention that you need. So where does that sit with you? And what do you think we can do to continue to build on it?
Yeah, and I think another one of the areas that we kind of compete with in that space is all of these emerging tech companies that are ad tech, and they're getting time time and time on speaking panels and so forth. One of the things that we're trying to do is, look, we host a lot of consumer events, as you know, whether it's the iHeart Radio Music Awards, the Music Festival, country music, we're down at South by. We're trying to kind of set the stage literally before an event to where we already have a lot of brands and agencies and so forth that are there. Let's have a real conversation. Let's invite some of those independent agencies to this to speak about the success that they're having with some of those brands, because at the end of the day, we welcome all partnerships across the board. We want to make sure that we are looked at from an independent agency standpoint, whether it's holdcos or independent agencies. We want to be in that consideration. And it starts, as we said earlier, with the relationship. So the more areas that we can kind of share wins, share success, I think it's better for everyone. And we're trying to do that with a lot of our events.
Hopefully we'll get a chance to knock out at least one of these in 2026, where we can do a roadie live on site, invite a bunch of those independents, do a version of this. I do think that there's something to be said. I definitely took that away from Mir, and I know you did as well, Larry, to be with your peers in a way that's in a non-competitive space where you aren't fighting specifically for business, where you realize the strength in numbers. That's why holding companies do as well as they do. Last question, we're starting to run out of time. It's called Key to My Heart. You are in charge of an event, and you get to pick the keynote speaker. Who would you pick and why? They can be with us or no longer with us. Jonathan, let's stick with you. Who would you pick and why?
I don't know. It sounds really cliche, but I've always been a big fan of Apple, so I would have to say Steve Jobs. But I have a feeling if he spoke to me afterwards, he'd have a lot of criticism because he was very big at that as well. So I'd take any input he gave me, whether it's very harsh or not. I'd take it and definitely appreciate it.
Larry, how about on your side? You're in charge of the keynote. Who do you pick and why?
Probably David Ogilvy.
Okay.
Just, talking about the marriage of data and creativity really before it was fashionable. And now everything's attribution and how we can change creative so quickly based on near or real-time data. And I think that was one of his claims to fame prior to even before it became a reality today. So,
Ivan, you get the last word. Who would you pick?
Oh, actually, with no surprise, I'll pick Mark Reed, actually.
Mark Reed?
I'll pick Mark Reed to explain what went wrong. To explain in terms of what happened and his tenure, what went wrong. To really basically, again, you guys, Jonathan and I probably don't know me from the LinkedIn post. This is the kind of stuff I write. I would love basically for him to explain what went wrong and basically if it was the market's fault or was basically he was not good at your job.
Listen, I think we need those kinds of people sometimes, including yourself, Ivan, who's willing to go out there and say, it's not all great, right? They're not what everybody thinks they are. So stop saying congratulations on all these posts when 1,000 people just lost their job. Well, listen, that's really great insights. I appreciate your time. Larry, on behalf of yourself, Jonathan Faulkner, Ivan Fernandes, thanks you guys so much for joining me on this episode of Rise of the Independent Podcast. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening to Rise of the Independents, hosted by Sean Halter and presented by MiO Marketplace. MiO, the marketer's matchmaker. Find out more about them by visiting miomarketplace.com today.